I used rap back in the 90s, now I'm back on my own grounds, putting forth this ancient shit. You can hear it in the sound, my voice, giving you scholarship and there's no choice. I'm called Maine, so my main objective is go as I came, like Cain. We kill up our brothers because of the Bible way. Somebody that took the recessive's brain, put it in the black man's head. My folks, they should all roll out with me just like these books I read. I'll bring your ass from amongst the dead, like I said. I'm bred, tell motherfuckers what the ancestors said. I'm bred to kill white supremacy as dead. I'm bred, tell you all I know about the melanin molecule. I wake sleep mass up out of they slump and sit in the school to solar am rules over a holographic attitude. That means that my demeanor is set to tell your ass the truth. That means that my position is here to give your ass the scoop. Don't need a Benz when I ride. I'm a guy, a new input. I do this self-initiation to send one through this. Study MOTEP, come up with the conclusion. Medical association is ruthless. My conclusions is to take these words as adjectives, nouns, and verbs, providing a spark for your spine. So when I speak, they'll never be heard. From the heart to the pineal, spirituality will show you what's really real. To God and man form, and the solution ain't the deal. To worship something outside yourself is to worship something inferior to yourself. You can send it to us in, so the only one who can save your ass is self. Sight me on sight, like lion, or I come with my eye attached to my sword. Heart precede my walk, actions precede my thoughts. So I'm off to take a walk, is how I be dealing with my thoughts. I be staring at my people, y'all wanna be gods or not. I'm an alchemical nutcase. My pathwork got me moving at my own pace. I'm called Maine, so my main objective is to bring the pain I can't get fucked with. Literally, I'm in the coaches. I brought my fire from the heavens, I'm Prometheus. I shine my light in the darkness, that makes me Lucifer. Get it? Psychologically, I'm inclined to do this shit till you can't fuck with it. Crushing every rapper, they don't have the mental capacity. Ain't talking about shit on their music, you motherfuckers is sloppy. So I'm back from the grave, knowledge I crave. Then I get assassin pussy, I'm Dionysus with my thesis. Raising my kundalini, I'm out the bottle, I'm the genie. People judge me.
All right, greetings everybody, welcome to the show. Greetings, Brother Baal, is that you? Hello?
Hello?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. How are you?
I'm doing good. Sorry, I was just getting everything fired up and running. We want to welcome you back to the show.
Thank you. Thank you. So we're live right now?
Yes, we are live right now.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me back. And it's been a great honor. And before we even start, I just want to say I was watching your interview, involving you. And I have to say, I resonated with so much of what you said. And if anyone has not watched it yet, you got to watch it.
No, I appreciate that. And I saw your message. I didn't know that about your mother either. That's kind of. Yeah,
and so many other things. I mean, I'm listening to this. I'm like, wait, are they interviewing me?
Yeah,
so it was actually quite nice. It was great. I really enjoyed it.
No, I appreciate that. Yeah, sometimes I don't think people understand the stuff that we've been through to get where we're at. It's not like it happened overnight. But I appreciate that. But anyway, I welcome you back to the show as usual. Even though you said it's an honor to be here, it's always an honor for us to have you back here. And I know you're busy and you're constantly writing, so I know taking 2 hours out of your time is a sacrifice, and we appreciate it. So obviously what we want to talk about tonight, and let me put out there before we start, if you do not have Baal's book, Tiamat Unveiled, I would definitely get that book. Some of the stuff we will be discussing tonight or the topics, you can find a lot of information in his book, Tiamat Unveiled. It's available on Amazon. There's a digital, you can get it on Kindle or you can get the hard copy. And along with all his other books, obviously, and he has many books out. But tonight we're going to kind of focus on the topic of Tiamat and Leviathan. So I guess where I would like to begin first, before we get into it, if you could briefly introduce yourself, give a little bit of your background to maybe newer listeners or maybe those that are not familiar with you. If you could do that first before we begin, a little bit of your history.
Sure. It's my pleasure. So I've been on this path for well over 30 years. I've been studying and practicing the occult from many different aspects. And that's also why I resonated with your videos. Like, you know, you're not just in a single path. You studied many different paths.
Right.
And, you know, and I think that's very important for everyone's growth. And so I started upon that path as well. And the one advantage that I found that I had was that I grew up in a family that, you know, spoke Hebrew, spoke Aramaic, or and other languages that allowed me to study some of these texts in their original language.
Right.
And, you know, at first I didn't see that as an advantage until later on when I discovered my interest and my passion in the occult. And then I was like, wait a minute, you know, I can actually do this. I can read this. I can embrace these concepts from their core.
Right.
And so that's where I feel I give back to the occult community, is that I'm not just, you know, stating what other people say and everything like that. I'm like, all right, I'm going to break this down. This word means this. And it might be dry for some people. I can acknowledge that. I mean, it's, you know, when I first started, you know, that would probably be dry for me, you know, but as you get, you know, when you get older and more mature, you start thinking about those things, you know. So I'm essentially providing what I didn't have when I started this path, and I'm really honored to be able to provide that for others. And that's really the path that I'm on, is to provide as much detail as you can from the original text when we can. So,
Correct.
So really it's been over a 30-year quest, and it never ends. As you know, as you said in your own video, it never ends. You're constantly learning, you're constantly moving.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So quick question on something that you just mentioned. And again, for listeners, also, Baal has a YouTube channel also. Just Google Baal Kadmon, search it under that. He also has his own website, baalkadmon.com, which he offers a whole bunch of different things on there, different courses, classes, workshops, etc. In addition to all the books that he puts out. So I just want to make, I know a lot of you are aware of it, but in case you're a newer listener, and as we talk tonight, you might be interested in pursuing some more information on Baal Kadmon. All you got to do is Google his name, and all the different aspects on social media platforms come up. When you grew up, though, Baal, like when you got into the occult, I remember I think one of the first times we had you on, you told us a little bit about, you know, your background and your parents. I mean, did you grow up in a religious household? And when you got into the occult, were they receptive of it? Were they tolerant of it? If you could just share that real quick, because it's something you just said.
Sure. I will try to do it quickly. The thing is that, you know, both sides of the family had some type of occult background, but the Jewish side, they would have never acknowledged it as cult.
I got you.
Because that's not, you know, that first of all, they didn't even know what that term meant.
Sure.
Okay, because to them it was part of sort of the natural, swing of things. So
Right.
like my paternal grandmother, you know, people call her a great Kabbalist, a great sorceress, but to her own self, she didn't think of those terms. And in fact, she was illiterate, and
Right.
she came from Yemen.
Wow.
And she was completely illiterate, and she didn't know even the year she was born, and neither did my father. My father, he thought he was born, give or take, 1 or 2 years. So, you know, we're talking about cultures that, you know, may not, you know, have the same structure as we do.
Right.
But so they practice it naturally as part of their Jewish aspect. It was sort of a folk religion,
Right.
but it was really just Kabbalah. When I really examined it later, I was like, oh wow, you know, she actually was using Kabbalistic works.
Right.
And on my mom's side, you know, they're a little bit more I don't know if we can say conventional, sort of American, Irish. They too had a very strong connection, but when I was raised, I wasn't raised with that. So it's interesting. They didn't like push that on us. It was just sort of something that had to be discovered. And me, from the only sibling from the three of us, decided to embrace it because of an experience I had in Israel when, where I had this epiphany where I was like, oh my God, I'm going to study this for the rest of my life.
Right.
And I'm the only one from the siblings that has done that. And the other siblings, they look at me and like, oh, okay, you're interesting. You know what I mean? But they're completely, they're supportive as they can be. I mean, luckily, no one ever judges or anything like that. So
I got you. Okay.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. All right. What I want to get into first, the biblical origins of Leviathan. Obviously, there are some religious people. And one thing you do well in a lot of your books, especially your newest book, the way you kind of decipher and break down some of the different scriptures. And again, obviously, as you just mentioned a minute ago, that has a lot to do with your research and understanding the Hebrew, etc. Some people obviously still take a literal approach to some of these concepts in the Bible. But one chapter and verse I want to kind of is going to be the theme. And I want to point something out, and I want your thoughts on this. And I know you talk about it in the Tiamat and Behemoth a bit in different areas. But there is in the book of Isaiah 42. Now, in the Oxford Annotated Bible, why I like to use this, the commentary is very interesting. And these scholars clearly put in the commentary, this is all symbolic when they're talking about this sea creature, etc. But your thoughts on this? Did you want to say something to that?
Sure.
Yeah.
It's interesting because we're actually starting from the middle of the story because with Leviathan, or as in Hebrew, it's Leviathan.
Okay.
And Leviathan is a very enigmatic figure because in Isaiah, but also in other books, it is sort of described as some type of sea creature.
Correct.
Okay. Now, on the surface, that's like, okay, well, a lot of cultures have, quote unquote, sea creatures as some type of mythological background. But what I'm stating in that book is that Leviathan is actually a description of Tiamat. Okay. And the reason why I say that is because, one, first of all, it is a great serpent. It's in a very primordial environment, and it is in direct confrontation with Yahweh. Okay. Now, and here's why why this is significant. Because when you look at the book of Enoch, okay, and it's like an apocryphal text,
right?
It describes Leviathan as a female. It's the only time that Leviathan or Leviathan is described as a female. And the reason why that is significant is because the books of Enoch are a direct confrontation with Mesopotamian ideology.
Correct.
So what are they saying? What they're really saying is that Leviathan is Tiamat, and that combat between Yahweh and Leviathan is actually the combat between the Hebrews and the Mesopotamian idea. So Leviathan is actually Tiamat,
right?
In a symbolic form.
Correct.
And it seems disconnected because we're starting with Leviathan first, whereas I would say probably the best way to start this is from the top and then moving down. So we're looking at Leviathan first. So what I'm saying now seems sort of disconnected from the larger picture of things.
Right.
But in reality, Leviathan is the primordial, archetypical aspect of Tiamat, but we only find it in a female form in the Book of Enoch.
Right.
But I guess to make more sense of this, I think we need to sort of track back a little bit.
Okay.
Because the problem is that Leviathan or Leviathan comes after the Tiamat idea. So I'm thinking maybe if you're okay with this, I could sort of like rewind a little bit.
No, sure. Go ahead.
And start from the beginning. And so, you know, I don't know, some people may perceive this, some people may not, but, you know, I tend to hold back a little bit when I write. I tend to keep things sort of, not necessarily less confrontational, but, you know, there's sometimes I want to sort of like break out and become a little bit more philosophical. And then I'm like, well, I don't want to weigh down the text. So if you actually don't mind, I might actually make it a little bit heavier.
No, definitely.
Yeah, no, that would be great.
That would.
So I guess to rewind, and we'll come right back to Leviathan.
No problem.
Or Leviathan, is I guess we have to start from the root of things. So we know Tiamat to be chaos, right? Chaos or primordial abyss.
Right.
So I guess the good place to start is to define what exactly chaos is.
Exactly.
And I guess we can, because the term chaos is actually derived from a Greek word, which is chaos. And when you transliterate chaos into English, it's actually spelled K-H-A-O-S.
Right.
Okay? So it's actually chaos with a K.
Right.
And the very definition sort of tells you what it's about. It's a chasm, or like a gap between the heavens and the earth. In many ways, it is surrounding and encompassing all of creation.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess we can call that chaos with a K. Okay? And then it'll make sense why I'm doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have the idea of chaos with a C, and that is what most of us are understand. Mm-hmm. And what is chaos with a C? It's, you know, it's sort of asymmetrical. It's essentially there's no particular order to it. It's essentially upheaval and tumult, you know, of energies that emerge from chaos with a K.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's you know, and so I would say that Tiamat is definitely chaos with a K.
Okay.
But the beauty of chaos with a C is the one that we always use, is that it's actually much more organized than we think. I mean, when you think about it, you know, if you look at like mathematics or like, you know, the chaos theory, for example.
Right.
When you look at it, it's actually very organized. It's, even though it is quote unquote random,
right,
it is organized. It is sort of self-propagating. And some people may know this as a fractal. If anyone has ever seen a fractal, mm-hmm. What you will see is a similar image that is literally self-similar for infinity. Mm-hmm. So in this sense, it is sort of like a type of hyper-organization derived from tumultuous energy.
Okay.
And so in many ways, Tiamat, her body, her essence, is chaos with a C, and her soul, her spirit, is chaos with a K.
Okay.
And which is a much broader idea. So, you know, it's interesting. I know that sounds sort of esoteric, but really there's something to it, because my favorite philosopher, his name is Ken Wilber. He is not an occultist by any means. Mm-hmm. But he used a very similar distinction when he was talking about the cosmos. He would say, okay, there's cosmos with a C, and there's cosmos with a K.
Right.
And the cosmos with the C is the material world. And cosmos with a K, which is the Greek term, is not only the material world, but everything else as well. And so I thought, you know what, actually that makes really a lot of sense for chaos as it pertains to Tiamat.
Right.
Because I'm thinking, wait a minute, she is chaos with a K, because she is the origin of all these things, all of that energy, and she emits out of herself chaos with a C. But within chaos with a C, there is a lot of order and a lot of self-similar patterns. So in many ways, she is the origin of harmony and disharmony, but all together.
Right.
You know, some people look at Tiamat as being a one-dimensional character.
Right.
You know, where she's just like, oh, she's just, you know, chaos. But the thing is that, yeah, she is chaos. But some people may not understand what chaos actually means.
That's right.
You know what I mean? People say, oh, chaos means, you know, unbridled energy, tumult, and whatever. Yes, it means that too. But it's also chaos with a K, which is all-encompassing. So, and even in her own story, you know, in the Enuma Elish, and she sort of shows that, you know, and I don't know, do you want me to stop here and or continue?
No, continue. By all means, continue.
Okay. So in the Enuma Elish, which is one of the creation epics of the ancient Mesopotamians,
right,
that is where she shows herself. And so what is she exactly? She appears out of nowhere. Okay, no one has created her. She is a self-created being. Okay, pretty much sort of like Elohim is in the book of Genesis. He's self-created, right? He doesn't exist. No one created Elohim. You know, arguably, no one created him. And so, but Tiamat in the Enuma Elish is self-created or uncreated. So in many ways, she is actually beyond the gods. I know in my book, I call her a goddess.
Right.
But actually, she is way beyond.
That's right.
That you know, that label. I guess the reason why goddess is such a good term is because it makes it easy. But in reality, she's way, way, way beyond the category of goddess, but because she's unbegotten and self-created. So, you know, she's no goddess. She's actually above that characteristic.
Right.
You know, so in the Enuma Elish, it starts out pretty tame. You know, she and her consort Apsu they represent two aspects of the primordial waters.
Right.
She is salt water. Apsu is quote unquote fresh water.
Right.
And when they come together, they produce this primordial existence, and through them, the gods are created. So we have these sort of junior gods. And as with most Babylonian mythology and stories, we have this sense that the gods are very human-like. Okay, so we have Apsu, who's like, you know what? My kids are fucking making so much noise. I can't take it anymore. I want to kill my own kids. And no, but that's exactly, you know, sort of what it is. And so Tiamat is like, well, I don't think I'm really okay with that. Okay, I don't want to kill my own kids just because they're a little bit rowdy.
Right.
I mean, imagine doing that to your own kids. Like, you're making too much noise, I'm going to cut your throat. I mean, you're not going to do it, right?
Right.
So actually, Tiamat is at first the voice of reason, and Apsu is like, I don't care about these kids. So Tiamat comes to her son, Enki, and she says to him, look, your father's fucking pissed off, man. I mean, he is so pissed off. He wants to kill all you guys, okay? And so Enki is like, oh, shit, that sucks. Okay, all right, I have an idea. So what does Enki do? Enki casts a spell on Apsu. Okay, he casts a spell at first sort of to subjugate him. And then all of a sudden, apparently the subjugation spell goes a little bit farther than he wanted it to. Well, actually, he probably did want it. And what happens? Apsu dies.
Right.
Okay. And so Tiamat was like, whoa, this is not what I wanted. Sort of like The Godfather 3. If you've ever watched it, remember when Al Pacino was like, that's not what I wanted.
Yep, I remember clearly, yep.
Exactly. So that was Tiamat. She was like, that is not what I wanted. This is not what I told you this for.
Right.
And so she flew into a rage, according to the Enuma Elish.
That's right.
And so she decided to declare war on her own children. Okay. And now, in that war, she realized she could. She created a bunch of demonic beings.
Correct.
This is where, as I say in my book, this is where the conception of demonology starts.
That's correct.
In ancient Mesopotamia, you know, where she creates a horde of demons to as an army against her own children. And so one of these children, actually probably her grandchild, Marduk, decides, I'm going to take up the mantle against our own mother or grandmother.
Right.
And so he decides, all right, let me do this. And what he does is that he encircles her, he destroys her and cuts her in two.
Right.
And from those two parts, the known universe, or cosmos with a C, is created. Okay?
Right.
But interestingly enough, even though they say that, she was killed, there is a passage in the Enuma Elish that sort of says that she's not quite dead, because it says they're still keeping watch over her. And which means that, clearly she is not dead. And the reason why she is not dead is because she is still running behind the scenes. She is, I guess, if we wanted to use a computer term, sort of like a tech term, she is the kernel of the operating system of the universe.
Right.
She is the system kernel. So in some way, everything is running off of her. If the kernel fails in an operating system, the whole thing goes down. So like in a computer operating system, when the kernel, fails, everything goes down.
That's right.
And just like Tiamat being the kernel, she is sort of the bridge between the data or energy of the universe and the manifestation of that energy.
Right.
So it's incredible, and just to sum up this sort of long rant here is that, again, she reminds, her concept sort of reminds me of, again, that philosopher I mentioned earlier, Ken Wilber, where he talks about something called holons, which are sort of structures within structures. So it's like, for example, an atom, right? You have an atom, and then you have a molecule, a molecule transcends but includes the atom.
Right.
And then you have the cells. Cells transcend but include the molecules. And then organs transcend but include the cells. So really the key point here is that there's this transcend and include aspect, and that if the lower aspect is removed, the whole structure falls. And so Tiamat is the atom. You know, she cannot be removed by any means.
Right.
Her death scene in the Enuma Elish is really a description of her participation in creation. You know, as they say, you know, they're keeping watch over her because in the end, she is, you know, chaos and cosmos with a K.
Right.
You know, so without her, all is lost.
Right. No, that's as I'm listening to you talk, and everything. Well, I know we can't get it in one quick explanation, but as you were breaking all that down, I'm listening to you talk. Tiamat, as we know, is used in many different aspects on this path, the occult, etc. As I'm listening to you talk, I'm reflecting on how we, connect with that internally. So now, how do we take the mythology as occultists, magicians, adepts, whatever terms we connect with? Because to me, and this is just my take, I want to get your take on it, how you work with it as an occultist. I'm listening to a lot of stuff like when you were talking about how she gave birth to demons, created these demons. I look at, like you said, chaos. When you were mentioning just a few minutes back, people sometimes could have maybe this one-sided interpretation of chaos, but chaos can be a beautiful thing if you know how to work with it.
Yeah.
But I look at like a lot of the stuff that the challenges and the battles we face internally are these different aspects that you're talking about. And so how do we take the mythology, these stories, and working with these archetypes, in this case, obviously Tiamat, can you share with us, like, how do you use it in your ritualistic work? Knowing everything that you just said, do you apply that on an internal level? Or how do you utilize that?
Well, I used it in two different ways. One in a very external level, where I will do an outright ritual to Tiamat, as I describe in the book.
Right.
But when I'm with myself, okay, when I'm in my own space, when I'm just sort of contemplating things, I internalize what she represents, and really how to do that. It really is something that is very individual, because chaos, the idea of tumultuous energy that is also self-regulated, is a very individual thing. So for me, when I have, hard emotions or things that disturb me, because as you said in your interview, in your own interview, which I really loved, was that you got to take care of the shit that's in your head.
That's right.
Okay. And that's 100% true. And I'll tell you this, nothing truer has been said.
Right.
Okay. And so with Tiamat, when you embrace what it is that is causing you the anguish and the darkness that you have inside of you, that is harming you, because not all darkness is harm.
Right.
Because even Tiamat, remember when she existed before, Apsu was dead, she just self-existed. She was just there. She was just apparent, right there, living in her moment. And so what she tells me is that to accept that dark side of us, the thoughts, the negative thoughts, the perverted thoughts, the thoughts that, are not acceptable for other people. I guess what Carl Jung would call the shadow.
Right.
You know, and just accept them. Listen, acceptance of a dark side doesn't mean you need to act on it.
Right.
Okay. There are people, listen, I see people on Facebook that have a murderous rage. I mean, rage in them that, holy shit, man, if they had a knife and there was a person there, they'd cut their throat. There's no doubt about it.
Right.
Okay. But the thing is that it's not meant to enact that rage, but to permeate it inside of your system where you can acknowledge it. And that's the key. That's why I think so many people fall, is because they don't acknowledge that dark side. And so that's what Tiamat is. She is both chaos with a K, chaos with a C, and she just embraces everything. And she did it, and she does it. And the thing is that in some cases, we saw what happened when she decided to attack her own children. What happened? She was subjugated.
That's right.
She was subjugated. But the thing is that subjugation is not defeat, because remember, it says in the Enuma Elish, she is there still. We are watching over her. She is in a distant place. But really what that means is that she's still there. She is running behind the scenes. So Tiamat, in many ways, is a great role model for us, because in the beginning, she accepts everything.
Right.
And in the end, she loses it. And the thing is that, but that's okay.
Right.
Because what happens is when she loses her cool, the whole of creation is created out of her.
That's right.
You see what happens. So even though people are looking at it and say, oh my God, she was killed. But no, that's a symbolic act.
Correct.
She was killed and the world was created.
Correct.
Her anger, her embrace of her anger created the universe.
Correct.
And that's really what it's about. It's about embracing your darkness, embracing the anger that you have, and just working through it. Because in the end, what happens to Tiamat? She becomes the universe.
That's right. That's right.
You know what I mean? She becomes the universe. So the thing is that her anger is transmuted into the universe.
Right.
And that's what is being asked of us, is like when we have...
Man, that's right on point. That's right on point.
You know, what's that?
No, I'm saying you're right on point with this.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the hurt we have with other people, the hurts we have with our own selves, you know, because we are our worst enemy sometimes. And the thing is that she is the perfect embodiment of the human condition. She starts out in the primordial abyss.
Right.
Nothing bothers her, and then something bothers her. She gets angry, and then what happens to her? She transforms.
That's right.
She, even though it says Marduk killed her, but what happened to her? No, she was killed symbolically.
Right.
But the thing is that she created life from her anger.
That's
Look
right.
what happened to her. You know what I mean?
Right.
So that's what I'm talking about, is the transmutation.
Right.
And that's what she means. That's what we need to take out of her mythology, instead of seeing just an angry woman getting cut down by one of her kids or grandkids. But no, look what happens from that.
That's correct. That's right. And something you said just a minute ago about when you were talking about, some people, on Facebook that, don't, the message also I'm getting, again, I'm listening to you talk and I'm playing things in my mind. I think part of the challenge, from this mythology and this example is we have to be able to be skilled and disciplined, like you say, to deal with that chaos and facilitate those emotions, and those anger, because we also know on this path, and I want your thoughts on this, and on some occult paths, they talk about, the doctrine of indulgence. Like, how does one discipline himself, that fine line? Obviously, we have to indulge on a certain level, on our emotions, our angers and desires, but we have to obviously do it within reason. So my question is, what, in your opinion, and I use this, and what brings this to mind is the Tiamat story, because like you said, even though we saw what happened from it, you know, it became the universe, but we also see there was lessons to be learned, you know, from that quote unquote anger. But what's that fine line that, as you know, practitioners on this path, from indulging and being consumed by our indulgences, like what is, you know, how does one draw that fine line? I know it's going to vary. It's not the same for everybody.
You know, that's a great question, and it's interesting that you're asking it, because this is something that I encounter all the time. People email me. I get like 40, 50 emails a day. I cannot, if I showed you a screen print of my inbox, I have 30,000 unread emails. I cannot get to, over the past few years, you know? And so, but there is an element of your question in a lot of these emails.
Right.
And the thing is that really what it takes, and this is something that I had to work through myself. Look, when I was in my 20s and my early 30s, you know, I was very reactive.
Correct.
To things. And you know, very interesting, very similar to the interview that you put, that, you know, you were mentioning about some of the times where you got sort of caught out there.
Right.
But yet you were still studying spirituality, but somehow you still got caught out there.
That's correct.
And that's the thing. So did I. It may not be the same exact experience, but
right.
The thing is that it's the same concept, is that despite knowing all of these things, we sometimes can still get caught out there.
That's correct.
And where our better judgment is sort of kicked to the side. And so, you know, there's really two ways to do this. One is let things happen as they happen, and people are just going to learn the hard way. Okay.
Yeah.
You know, and actually that's probably the better way to learn.
That's right.
You know, because let me tell you something. I can tell you, and you can tell everyone. You know, you don't want to end up in the situations we've been in.
That's right.
But you know what? They're never going to get it, because until they get there, they don't know.
That's right.
But a better way to do this is really to take time and think about the bigger picture. Think about, okay, I'm angry right now. Okay, I feel this rage inside of me. You know, to question it, to ask it, to engage it. Say, okay, I'm angry right now at so and so, or angry at myself, or whatever it is, and say, okay, why am I angry? Okay, and try to think about the bigger picture. So, for example, you know, there are people in my family that I had a lot of disdain for. Right. You know, people that, you know, but you know what? In the beginning, I selfishly thought, you know, why are they doing this? Why are they being such bitches? You know, and why are they acting like this? You know, and then I had to stop. I had to take a couple of steps back and say, wait a minute. Is it really about me? And I'm not going to do like the new age things, like, oh, you know, no. What I'm saying is that, remember, they too have a past. They too have gone through things that make them who they are. So, like, for example, my father, you know, wasn't the best father in the world, okay? But the thing is that he was abandoned by his parents, okay? He had an 8th grade education. Am I going to blame him for not knowing how to raise me?
That's true.
That's the whole thing. We have to look, when we are in pain, okay, whatever pain we're in, we have to look back and say, okay, what is happening here? Why, yes, a lot of our pain, a lot of our stuff revolves around our childhood, but we forget that our parents also had childhood. We forget that. So we're not saying you got to give them the pass, no. But what I'm saying is we got to understand and open up our mind and say, okay, they are me right now.
Right.
How I am right now, they were too at one point. So we have to we don't have to forgive them. If you don't want to forgive them, that's fine. But just understand that they are as vulnerable as you are, we are.
That's right.
And that will help create a sense of compassion. And I think that's why when Marduk supposedly killed Tiamat, it still says, oh, they still have the watch over her.
Right.
Because she wasn't killed. They say she was killed, but she was not. She was, what happened is that she was put in a situation where she's still running behind the scenes, but she's no longer controlling the situation with her anger. And so the thing is that it's a very complex thing. I mean, if we were to open this up in a Jungian perspective, we would be here for fucking like 20 hours.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So yes. What I'm saying is that in the end, I'm not saying people need to forgive those who have done them wrong.
Right.
But they have to understand that those people who have done them wrong have also been done wrong.
Right.
And we just have to understand that.
Right. And I think you hit something on the head just a couple of minutes ago. And that's something I'm constantly telling people. I think when we're on this path and we're working with all this energy and the chaos, et cetera, you said something. I think it's about not being just purely reactive. We have to be proactive, and everything you just described, to me, that's the way somebody who's on the path to self-mastery, they're proactive. They analyze, like you just described, they analyze the situation. They look at the bigger picture. Right. And I think that's some of the best advice you can give anybody. And we don't do that on other paths. Like you say, it's not saying that the anger and the rage is a bad thing, but do you understand it? And the example you used with your father was a classic example. We might be, you might be mad at your father because he, when you were younger, because he wasn't a good father, but then you became proactive and said, well, look, he has a very limited education. So how can you hold him accountable, for something that he may not have the knowledge and the wisdom on? And I think that's great advice, man. I think that's really, I hope people can use that and connect it to other areas, of their work. But that was good. Yeah. Just to let the listeners know, and I want to get into Leviathan next. And after we finish talking about Leviathan, I know some of you have typed some questions in already, but go ahead and type your questions in caps. You can go ahead and start and get them in there now. This way it saves time, and then we can get them over to Baal Kadmon. If you would like to come in the room live and ask a question and speak with Baal, you could type your email in the chat, and I'll send you the link, and you can come in live and ask a question. So I'll encourage you to keep typing your questions in, and as soon as maybe about 15, 20 minutes, we'll get to those. I want to kind of now, in your book, Baal, you talk about, what you mentioned earlier about, you refer to Leviathan as the masculine aspect of Tiamat. Now I want you to kind of connect that. And the biblical quote I was talking about earlier, the Bible commentaries of this Bible here, just so people could see, and I only like this Bible because of the commentary. This is supposedly some of the top evangelists and scholars in the world. You'll see the names in there. But they refer to everything you just described. They refer to Leviathan in the commentary in Isaiah chapter 42 as symbolic of the primordial chaos that exists in creation. Right. So now explain, when you say in Tiamat Unveiled, you explain that Leviathan being the masculine aspect of Tiamat. Can we go to the Leviathan? Can you kind of expound on that?
Sure. Well, as I mentioned earlier, in the Bible, you have this masculine understanding of Leviathan or Leviathan, and it seems sort of disconnected from Tiamat at first. You have Yahweh fighting. I mean, literally, Yahweh is fighting a sea creature. Okay, you know what I mean? But quote unquote, the God of the universe is fighting a sea creature.
That's
so
correct.
The sea creature is, an enemy of Yahweh. So, which seems sort of ridiculous, right? But it on the surface it seems ridiculous, but it's actually a throwback. What they're really trying to say is we want to suppress our past. That's really what that's saying. Because in the book of Enoch, okay, as I said earlier, which is an apocryphal text, and many of us in the occult know of the book of Enoch, right?
Right.
And that's where the Watchers come from, and that's where all of those things come from. It referred, and remember, the book of Enoch is in response to Mesopotamian spirituality. It's literally a responsa against it.
Right.
And what do they call? What does he call Leviathan or Leviathan? Calls her a she. It's a her. She's a feminine force.
Right.
So what is that saying to me? Is that the evangelists are correct in the sense that they are saying that is the element of chaos. But Enoch is saying the same thing.
Right.
What Enoch is saying is that, okay, the evangelists are saying that it's a male version, but Enoch is saying it's a female version. They're actually talking about the same concept, which is this primordial deep, this primordial aspect in a serpent form.
Right.
And so even though they say that, okay, they're using the language that they are most comfortable with. Remember, most, Bible scholars are using language that they're comfortable with.
Right.
And so they're never going to acknowledge God as having any divine feminine. There would be never anything such a thing.
Right.
And they're using Leviathan as an example because in the book of Isaiah, there is no gender to Leviathan, but it is assumed that it is a male.
Right.
But it may not be. In the book of Enoch, it actually says it's a she.
Correct.
So, is this a primordial? The fact that they say that's the primordial chaos, they're right. What Leviathan is a representation of Tiamat. I mean, that's exactly what it is.
Right.
And the Bible story of Yahweh against Tiamat is their way, the Hebrews' way, or the Israelites' way, to suppress that understanding of chaos, to suppress their old ideals. Because prior to the Bible, Tiamat ruled.
That's right.
To whom the chaos, the sea creature ruled. So really, in the end, what they're saying is that we are defeating our old beliefs. And that's really what was happening in Isaiah. They were defeating their old beliefs. Right. They were saying, no, Leviathan is defeated by Yahweh. But really, that's very symbolic, because Yahweh did not defeat Leviathan. What was happening is that they were saying, we used to believe in you, Tiamat, but we don't anymore, and we're going to defeat you now. And that's what that was about. Right. It was not, it was nothing else. This was the Hebrews' way of getting control of the narrative, which they have continued to do so ever since.
Correct.
And that, of course, went into Christianity and Islam and everything. And that's really what it was. It was the conflict of the old Israelites and the new Israelites. And, you know, that's really what was happening there, you know, because Leviathan is Tiamat. I mean, there's no doubt about it.
Right. Now, I know you mentioned the Atrahasis. I know you've mentioned a lot of these Babylonian and Sumerian texts. If we could, to elaborate, for those that may not know, and I know you do a lot of research on this, I do myself, how did all of these Sumerian and Mesopotamian concepts, you know, get in to what we know today as these, quote, so-called Hebrew scriptures or Hebrew text? You know, what's the connection here? If you could share some of that. I know you've done a lot of research on this.
Oh yeah, that you know, that's a great question because it's so, you know, if only more people would look at the evidence, everyone would find out exactly what's going on. But really what was happening is, if you look at the Bible, much of what's written there, let me sidetrack, not the Bible, the Old Testament. Let's use the term Old Testament because that's really what we're talking about. We're not talking about the New Testament, which is, you know, way after. So in the Old Testament, we have all of these stories, right? We have Noah's Ark and all that stuff. And all those stories are found also in the ancient Babylonian texts. Okay, we have, I mean, the Bible, I will give it its due, is that the Bible organized the stories in a more streamlined way.
Right.
That's for sure. But the ancient Babylonians had a flood story that was so similar to Noah's Ark that it's actually, you read it and you're like, okay, well, let's just put it this way. If you had someone who didn't know Noah's Ark story and they read that, the Enuma Elish, the Epic of Gilgamesh, and they read the back end of the Epic of Gilgamesh, and then read the Noah's Ark story, they're going to be like, oh, wow, this sort of seems similar.
Right.
And because it is. And the Enuma Elish and the Gilgamesh epic they date way before the Bible. So we have this connection where these stories sort of bleed in. And now, how did it get to there? Really, the true source was when the Jews or the Hebrews were sent into exile.
Right.
Prior to the exile, there was no defined system. I mean, I know that they would say that there was, but there isn't. When they went to Babylon, what did they get from Babylon? They got the concept of Lilith.
That's right.
Lilith comes into play suddenly after they are exiled into Babylon. And all of a sudden, all the texts start to gel. Okay, so really, the Hebrews got a lot of their early stuff from their exile in Babylon, even though they claim, oh no, these texts are much, much older, but in reality, no. Those texts are from Babylon, and there's no doubt about it. And they just organized it in a way that made it their own.
Right. And
there's like their civilization.
Right.
You know?
And the flood story, just so the listeners that Baal Kadmon was referring to in the Sumerian text, the character Utnapishtim, if you read that story, like Baal said, that you'd think you're reading the Noah's Ark story. Your thoughts real quick. Are you familiar with, or have you ever read any of Zecharia Sitchin's work? And what do you think about, if you have, what do you think of his work?
Oh, yeah. First of all, I met Zecharia Sitchin in Manhattan because I live in Manhattan. I mean, I have two homes, but I live in Manhattan. That's my primary residence.
Right.
And I happened to be in the local Barnes & Noble. This was the early 2000s.
Okay.
And I bumped into him, and I recognized him immediately. I was like, oh my God, you're Zecharia Sitchin. And we spoke in Hebrew. I mean, he was fluent in Hebrew.
Sure.
and he was looking at books about diabetes.
Really?
I remember that very well. So my issue with Zecharia Sitchin, as much as he was a great guy in person,
Right.
And I've read his Earth Chronicles. I read them years ago. The thing is that sure, it's easy to make those interpretations because all these texts say, "Oh, the gods came from the sky, the angels came from the heavens."
Exactly.
All these things. So we can easily interpret that and say, "Oh, they're on a spaceship. They're coming down from the heavens."
Right.
So if you apply sort of like the scientific mind to it, you'll be like, well, clearly there's no such thing as the spiritual world, so they must mean that they're coming from the heavens, meaning they're coming from space.
Right.
But if you have a spiritual notion, then it's like, well, not necessarily. They could be coming from a different spiritual dimension.
Correct.
So it really depends, because Zecharia Sitchin was no religious person. Okay, he was probably less Jewish than most Jewish people that I know.
Right.
Because he was not religious in the conventional sense. And so it really depends how you look at those things. So if, for example, the three angels that presented themselves to, before Sodom and Gomorrah was destroyed, the Bible says, these are angels. These were emissaries from heaven, right?
Right.
So it depends on your outlook on life. If you believe in a spiritual dimension, then they were angels. They were literally spiritual beings that came from a different dimension. But if you don't believe in that and believe that, extraterrestrials are out there, then that's what they were.
Right.
For me personally, okay, I do believe that there are extraterrestrials. It's obvious because just statistically speaking, in such a vast universe, what are the chances that we are the only ones? From the hundreds and billions and whatever it is, it just doesn't make sense that we would be the only ones. So I do acknowledge that aliens do exist. Okay, I believe in it 100%.
Right.
But I question: are they really, helping us evolve? There are some interesting stories. Like, for example, not to go too, I'll say this quickly. In some of the Hindu texts, there are stories that the gods are sort of like fighting each other, in the heavens, and the people below are experiencing what would, I guess, in any modern sense, would be nuclear fallout. So what's happening there? Like, what is that? Why are these people tasting metal? Why is their hair falling out? Why is their nails falling out? Which is something that you find in nuclear, in radiation poisoning.
Right.
So that's the whole thing. So but it doesn't mean that they necessarily helped creation, move on.
I agree.
But that they simply exist. So really, I like Zecharia Sitchin's work, but it's, I can't. There's no way to prove it, and that's the problem. There's no way to really put it, put a dart on it and say, all right, that's what it is.
I agree.
Because there's just too much information out there, and it really depends. Is it spiritual? Is it just material? Or so I expect it, and I will read it because I respect the translation.
Right.
But otherwise, there's no way for me to say his word is gospel.
I agree. I agree. Now, when you use the term, just so we're clear on this, because when you cross this line, I too believe there are definitely highly intelligent life forms out there. You got to be a fool to believe we're the only people in the universe. That's just, I think at this point that should be common sense, whether you're on this path or not. But my question is, this becomes a hot topic, and I'm glad you brought that up. And I brought Zachariah Stitchin up because he tends to lean towards the, that aspect of it. Now, I do agree with, like you say, some of the the translations and the biblical correlation to the Sumerian text. I think that's where I more connect with his work as opposed to some of that stuff. But when we hear this word extraterrestrial, this could be a hot topic because I think everybody has a different concept of what that is. Now,
right.
In your view, like I believe that, not all extraterrestrials are big-headed grays and things of that nature. Some of them are just like us, like more intelligent life forms, but some, and this is just my concept on it, kind of, look like us and are like us, but just more highly evolved and intelligent. And that's just my perception. But when you're saying it, because some people obviously get more into the sci-fi aspect of it. And I'm not saying there aren't entities that could exist out there that look like that, but I see in that whole extraterrestrial UFO phenomenon, some people can go way out there to left field and they're not really grounded in reality. So when you're saying it in your thoughts and your approach, when you're saying that you believe that there are extraterrestrials or highly intelligent beings in the universe outside of us, how do you conceptualize that when you say that?
Okay. So, I think when people think about extraterrestrials, they're always thinking about, highly advanced beings. And I understand why. But there are also extraterrestrials, because what does the term mean? It just means that they are outside of the terrestrial boundary that we have that are not advanced.
Correct.
I mean, the bacteria on Mars is extraterrestrial.
That's right.
Because it's not part of our terra. So for me, extraterrestrial, the term is very broad. It means very advanced forms and very primitive forms, because I will tell you, I'm pretty sure we're not the most primitive of the universe, but we're also clearly not the most advanced either.
That's right.
So for me, extraterrestrial means any civilization, be they primitive or advanced, outside of our own.
Okay.
And that's how I see it. So, but again, a lot of people do see extraterrestrial and they think immediately, more advanced beings, but some of them may not be.
That's right.
Some of them may not be advanced because we're talking about a huge universe. So statistically, we are probably, I don't know, maybe the lower third. Okay, but but I mean, who knows, right? I'm just throwing a number out there, but there are clearly going to be civilizations much less advanced than we are, that are extraterrestrial. So that's why the term extraterrestrial needs to be defined as anything outside of our territory. And that means either really advanced or really primitive.
Correct.
And that's how I see it. I don't have one view. I'm like, okay, the Greys, from what I understand of them, is that they are more advanced than us in certain capacities, but from all the accounts that we have, they seem to be sort of emotionally stunted in some way. So the thing is so then what does that make them? Does that make them more advanced, or does that make them less advanced?
Right.
And the thing is that I guess it depends on what you think of emotions. Some people say, oh, emotions are the worst thing that humans can have, because it can make us do foolish things. But the thing is that it can also make us do really awesome things too.
Correct.
So that's the thing. So are the Greys superior to us? Maybe technologically, but maybe they're not superior to us on an emotional level. Mm-hmm. So that's the whole thing. We don't know. We just don't know what's going on there.
Right.
It's a big question.
Good point. All right, so the last thing I want to finish, and then we'll start taking some questions for you, so we can get some of that. And so this primordial chaos, is it? I don't know if that's what you were trying to, as a whole, convey in Tiamat Unveiled. So when we look at, Leviathan as the masculine aspect of it, or of Tiamat, and Tiamat being the feminine aspect of this primordial chaos. When we're looking at the masculine and the feminine as a whole, primordial chaos itself, we know the word primordial, it has root in the word prime, the essence. So, I mean, again, I can only give my interpretation on it and how I work with it. We always hear this term in modern alchemy circles. You know, out of chaos comes order. In a nutshell, as magicians, adepts, practitioners on this path, is it safe to say, and I say safe to say just loosely, that that's the approach we should take when working with this chaos? That, because I kind of approach it like, I think chaos is a beautiful thing when you embrace all aspects of it. So is the point here is that's the challenge for us, you know, on this path to work with that chaos, but we have to make our personal order out of it?
Well, yes, exactly. Just like I said earlier, that when you look at in mathematics something called chaos theory, right?
Right.
When you look at what it is, okay, and what it can produce, if you look at a fractal, okay, again, a fractal is an image that is self-similar, that is self-organized. That's what chaos is. It's we think of it as you know, like this organized system, but I will tell you the best answer to your question is look at a fractal image and look at it deeply, because what you're going to see is you're going to see a big image of something, and then go down one level and you're going to see the same image that you saw on the higher level. And then go down another 2 levels and you're going to see the same image that you saw at the highest level. And they're just self-similar, going all the way down and all the way up. So the thing is that it is organized. It is organized. What it really is that there's a harmony there that exists within chaos. And harmony is not balance. Okay? I think a lot of people get confused between harmony and balance.
That's right.
And no, but chaos is harmony, not balance. Because look, think about this for a moment. What is a balanced scale? Visualize what a balanced scale is.
Right.
You look at it right now, both sides, they're dead. There's nothing going on.
Nothing.
There's nothing. Each side is equal, but harmony is not like that.
That's right.
Because harmony means that some things are up, some things are down. Look, if you eat right now a piece of cake, okay, your insulin is going to shoot up, but then other chemicals are going to shoot down because they have to create like an equilibrium. That's harmony.
Right.
And so, whereas balance, if you ate sugar and everything stayed balanced, you'd be dead.
That's right.
You know what I mean? So that's what chaos is to me. Chaos is harmony.
Right.
And that's what Tiamat is. Remember, she, from herself, created everything. So that means she is inherently harmonious.
Okay.
But again, people confuse harmony with balance, harmony with peace. No, harmony is not peace. Harmony is sometimes this is up, this is down. When you feel depressed, you feel depressed. When you feel happy, you feel happy. You work with those energies. You know, you can't expect to be up, you know, all the way to one angle and down all the way to the other. It's harmony. You're going to have bad days. You're going to have good days.
That's right.
And that's what it means. Tiamat is harmony, but harmony is chaos. But people will never view it that way because they don't really think in those terms. But like I said, all of you, everyone who's watching or listening to this, look at a fractal and tell me there is no harmony there.
That's right.
Okay, that's chaos theory right there in your fractal. Look at it and just say, holy shit, that is the most harmonious thing I've ever seen. And it's all out of chaos.
That's
all
right.
out of randomness.
That's right.
It's amazing stuff.
Right.
Amazing.
Cool. Beautiful. All right, so let's take some questions for you. Again, people, I'll try to get to as many as them I can. We're going to run to the 10-hour. I'll try to get to as many as I can. If you haven't typed in your questions yet, go ahead and start typing them in. If you would like to come in live, just put it in the chat. I'll send the link to your email. You can come in live and ask Baal a question. So Chaotic Scott had typed in earlier, have you ever read anything or any connection? He can't remember. He might have read something, the connection between Leviathan and Behemoth as brothers. I know Behemoth is beast of the field. In the Hebrew, I think that title in certain passages is given to him. Am I wrong?
Okay, well, the term in Hebrew for the latter being is behemoth.
Okay.
And behemoth, it just means sort of, if you translate it literally in Hebrew, it just means sort of beast.
Right.
And it's a plural. It's a plural. It's not a singular term.
Okay.
Behemoth just means sort of beast. So that could be a cow. That could be a ram. That could be a pig. That could be anything behemoth. But in terms of what he's asking, they are related in the sense that in the Apocrypha, and again, this is the book of Enoch that we were just discussing earlier, they mentioned that Behemoth or whatever you want to call it, and Leviathan are actually partners. They are actually, I'm not going to say husband and wife because that's not the term that they use, but in Enoch, it says that Behemoth and Leviathan is the female. They are together and they work together, but they are not the same entity, but they work together. So in Hebrew, in Jewish lore, yes, they are together. They are somehow intertwined, but they are very different entities. Okay. And in the Bible, it's not very clear. When you look at the Bible, Behemoth and Leviathan, they have no relation, but in the Apocrypha, they do. They are somehow a couple. They're somehow together.
Okay. Appreciate it. All right. So hopefully that answers your question, Chaotic Scott. The next question, hopefully I'm not saying your name wrong. I don't know if it's Case or KC, the artist. Are the god in your thoughts about are these gods that we talk about, are they real or are these just energies like formulas? Your thoughts, or I guess obviously you have your perception on it. What's your thoughts on that?
I think that they are a combination of both. I think that there is an energy out there. So when we call upon gods in the sense, whatever God it is, okay, something is happening. There's some type of energy exchange that we have. So when I call upon, I don't know, the goddess Tara or Belial or, something. Something is happening. There is an energy exchange that is happening. Right. Now, the thing is that they are actually both. Those entities represent energies that exist in the universe just sort of naturally. We label them as this or that. Okay, but in reality, they are label-less, actually. All these energies are label-less, but we label them because it's easier for us to, sort of understand. Right. So I sort of look at it as a painting, When you look at a very beautiful painting, you have on the upper right side, you might have a little bit of blue, and you might have a little bit of red on the other side. That's what they are. They're all sort of colors in a grand painting, and they make this painting one unit. So they're not necessarily one and the same. They have their own individual energies, but they're more complex than just saying, okay, this entity is out there somewhere. It is out there somewhere, but it's also not. And that's where I think we have a lot of problem in this community, is that we look at things very literally But it's not to say that the literal version isn't true either.
Right.
We have to understand that these are multi-dimensional things. So we're talking about, yes, it is literal. There is this energy exchange that there's no doubt about it. When I do a mantra to Kali, I feel her. I know she's there. I see it. I feel it. I know it. And then there's this archetypical understanding that it's like, that's sort of inside me. You know what I mean? Like, it's very hard to explain, but I would say that they exist both in and outside. And that's as easy as I can get because it's such a complicated situation.
No, I agree because I can relate because currently what you just described is what I'm experiencing right now. I'm in the midst of a week-long working with Lucifer, kind of working with sigils and blood packs and things of that nature. And I can agree when you do the invocations, you definitely are tapping into an energy or a presence that's real. I mean, when you described it with Kali, you hit it on the head. Even when I've done the mantras out of your book, I mean, I think that some of those mantras in there, I mean, I think we even posted a clip of the video from about 2 years ago. We did a big get-together group ritual, and all the mantras from, we used were out of your book. And I can't tell you, when we got locked in, I mean, there was some things happening that people might describe as being odd as far as, the spirit overtaking, certain individuals when those things were going on. So, yeah, I mean, you hit it on the head. You definitely hit it on the head. All right, the next question. Hold on, I skipped on me. Okay. Where'd that go? Give me a second, lost my spot, it jumped on me. Okay, here we go. Okay, so Damien asks, I know you did this earlier, but he said if you can go through it again in detail, explain, can you break down again the chaos with the C and the chaos with a K into a couple of sentences for me, please? I want you to go, if you could go through that again.
That's funny.
I don't know if you can do it in a couple of sentences though.
Yeah, no. Okay, yeah, that's fine. Chaos with a K, okay, is the original Greek transliteration of chaos from Greek to English is chaos. And chaos, as it is transliterated, is K-H-A-O-S. And what that really means is all encompassing. It's encompassing everything, the all of creation, in between the earth and the heavens, because that's the term in Greek actually means chasm or gap. And what it's saying is that it fills the gap between creation and heaven and earth and everything. And so it is literally the ground of being. Okay, the chaos with a K is the ground of being, and that is Tiamat. She's the ground of being, so she is chaos with a K. And I do know that some people that are listening use the term chaos with a K.
Right.
And I look at it and I'm like, man, you guys are so right, And I was like, yes. I even though I don't respond, but I'm like, yes, that's exactly it. It's chaos with a K. Chaos with a C is the unbridled, sort of tumultuous energy that still, as tumultuous as it is sort of self-organized, but it derives from chaos with a K. Mm-hmm. Just like Ken Wilber says, chaos, cosmos with a K, cosmos with a C, where cosmos with a C is the material universe. Cosmos with a K is the material universe and everything else. So chaos with a K is everything, and chaos with a C is specifically the tumultuous energy that exists. So there really is, they're interrelated. They chaos with a C is enfolded in chaos with a K.
Mm-hmm.
But chaos with a K is the bigger view, the larger view of this energy. That's really what it is.
Okay. Now, before I'm going to bring Raven in a second. I know she's got a question. I know a lot of people. It's always been a big thing in the occult, or even left-hand path. How much of Carl Jung's work do you read? Or has he been any influence on you? I just want your thoughts on that. I'll tell you why I'm asking that.
Sure. I will say that Carl Jung has a very, very big influence in the sense that my early days, I was obsessed with Carl Jung. Okay. I have all of the Bollingen series. I've read his autobiography, which, by the way, half of it is fiction, half of it is real.
Yeah.
He even said so. He even said some of it is probably bullshit.
Right.
I was obsessed with it because I loved that his ideas of the archetypical ideas, the shadow, the introvert, the extrovert, all those things I love because I can relate to some of them. Look, I'm a natural introvert. He created that system. You know what I mean? He defined what that meant. The Myers-Briggs test is very much tied to his ideas of introvert, extrovert, judgment, thinking. So Carl Jung has a big influence on me, and I got influenced by Joseph Campbell, who got me into Carl Jung. It's a big influence, but there is a limit, and I think that certain things that Carl Jung has said, I think is not true. I think that his ideas that babies or children are having transcendental experiences because they are sort of pre-personal. They don't have judgment. I don't think that's true. I think it's actually pre-personal. I think they don't have a judgment, but it's not transpersonal. He said, Jung said that children have spiritual experiences, but I actually think they're having pre-spiritual experiences. You know what I mean? They're not transcendental. They're actually pre-personal. And this is also something which I agree with the philosopher that I mentioned earlier, Ken Wilber, where he says the same thing. I mean, he's like, look, kids, they have sort of this oceanic experience, but it's not necessarily spiritual. It's actually pre-personal, not transpersonal.
Okay.
And so that's where I disagree with Carl Jung, where he says it's transpersonal. I don't agree. I think it's pre-personal.
Okay.
So I think he does influence me, but there are obviously some differences. Sure.
All right, I'm gonna go to the next online question. Raven's having a little connection problem. She keeps coming in and out. I'll see if she can fix that, and then we'll go back to her. So, all right, the next question we have online. I just had what I did. Okay. This is from Mario. Mario, I hope I'm not butchering your last name. Hayamaha. I hope I didn't butcher that. His question is, how would one tap into the Tiamat? Well, actually, I think it's a two-part question. You want me to just give you the first part and then do the second part?
Yeah, sure. Why not?
All right. So the first part, Baal, is how would one tap into the Tiamat energy?
You know what? I mean, that's actually probably the easiest thing you can do is to tap into those emotions that you have that are raw. Tap into it. I mean, aside from the rituals in the book, right?
Right.
Tap into what you feel. It's okay. A lot of people are ashamed by what they feel. People, when they have anger, they have hate, they think, oh God, I wish I could kill that person, right? The thing is that clearly, obviously, you're not going to kill them. But the thing is that it's okay for you to feel that, to just, get into that emotion, feel it. What is it saying to you? Allow yourself to feel the emotions that you have. that is as basic as you can get. And that is going to tap you into Tiamat, because that's what Tiamat is about. She is about the raw embrace of who you are, your emotions, everything. So actually, that's the easiest way, and that's probably the easiest way anyone can do it. You know, you have resentment for people. Look, you don't have to act on this, but you know what? Feel it. Go through it. That's okay. Go through it. Just like you said in your interview. Sometimes you just gotta work through those issues, and that's the best way to tap into her, because that's what she's about. She is the base of all of our emotions. She's the base of everything.
Right.
So when you feel that urge, that hatred, don't suppress it, because what you resist persists. I know that's a very new age thing to say, but it's actually very true.
Very true.
You know, what you resist persists. And so the thing is that embrace that anger that you have. You don't have to act on it. Just embrace it. Feel it. It's okay. It's okay to feel it. Because if you don't, it will boomerang on you, and it will fuck your life up.
That's right.
Okay.
Yep.
You know, so that's how I feel you can embrace Tiamat in the simplest level. No candles, no rituals, just you and her, you and you. That's the thing, you and you.
Right.
That's the true embrace of Tiamat.
Right. I think the second part of his question, I think you kind of started to answer it, but maybe you want to elaborate on this a little more. All right, so the second part of his question is, since she is the universe, physical cosmos, and maybe there's more to just the physical cosmos in my opinion, and running in the background, how would one communicate with this intelligence? I think you kind of just started alluding to it though.
Well, the thing is that if she's the backbone of all creation and she's running in the background, just communicate with her. That's it. Just say, hey, Tiamat, you know, literally, because she's everything. There's no distance between you and her. You are part of her.
Right.
You know, literally, her existence brought you into being. So the thing is that, yeah, it might have been in a primordial time, but that blood that you have in you, remember, she's salt water. We are salty beings. Lick your skin. That shit is salty. Okay.
That's
okay.
Right.
No, I'm telling you.
No, I'm laughing because it's true.
What I'm talking about. She's right there. You don't need to go out somewhere and say, okay, well, you know, how will I communicate with her? Man, she is in your skin. Okay, she is in your skin. She is in your tears. She is in your sweat. Okay, so you don't have to do anything. You just have to be connected to yourself and say, oh my God, I am part of this thing.
That's right.
You know, of this. And so that's how I would say is the best way to communicate. If you want to use rituals, you can. You know, in my book and other books, I know that there are other books out there. But really, those are just stepping stones, you know, for you to get closer to what she really is. You know what I mean? So It's like these books are just a stepping stone. They're not the end all be all.
Sure.
Okay. You know what I mean?
Sure.
They're not the end all be all. So you want to communicate with her directly, put your tongue to your hand, taste that salt.
That's right.
And you will connect with her right there.
That's it. All right, good advice. Let's see if we can get a good connection with Raven. Raven, are you there? Can you hear us? Is your connection good? Hello, Raven, can you hear us? I see you here, but I don't know if you can hear me. Hold on a second. I don't know if she can hear me. Could be the try one more time. If not, we'll go back to the question. Raven, can you hear me? I see you in here. Okay, she's probably still having connection difficulties. All right, so let's go back to the chat. All right, Trident 72 asks, Is Tiamat only referred to in the Book of Enoch? Any other references you can give to Tiamat? As far
Well, I mean, Tiamat is not she's not mentioned in the book of Enoch as Tiamat. She's actually mentioned as Leviathan,
right?
But as the female form of Leviathan. Tiamat has only, as far as I know, okay, she has only been mentioned in, I mean, when we're talking about ancient texts, right? She's only found in that name, with that name, in the Enuma Elish. She isn't even found in the Atrahasis. She's found in the Enuma Elish as Tiamat and nowhere else by that name. Okay, she could be, she could be under other names, like I said, Rahav and Leviathan, and she could be Lotan and Yam from other systems. But as Tiamat herself, I believe she is only mentioned in the Enuma Elish.
Okay. Fair enough. All right, Raven's trying to reconnect. She's having major problems. But we'll come back to her. All right, see what else we have here. Scroll down. I don't. Okay, this was from Key Goddess. Is Inanna Ishtar a primordial energy as well?
That's a great question, and the easy answer is yes.
Right.
But the more complicated answer is that Inanna and Ishtar, whom I work with a lot, and I haven't published anything about them recently or at all, but I have a lot of work with them. I mean, years and years of work with them. They are an outcropping of Tiamat. So there, I guess you could say that there are aspects of Tiamat, but really what they are is an energetic outcropping of Tiamat. And Tiamat is the originator of these energies. So Inanna and Ishtar are, if we want to look at it in a sort of like a black and white terminology, they are essentially grandchildren and great-grandchildren of Tiamat. So remember, Tiamat is the origin. She is the atomic component. And Ishtar and all of them are the transcend but include aspects of Tiamat. So in many ways, they include many aspects of Tiamat, but they also transcend her at the same time.
Okay.
So it's yes and no.
Okay, fair enough. All right, looks like Raven's back in. Let me see if she's clear. Can you hear me, Raven? You have a major problem. Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we got you crystal clear. I see you were having problems there. But before your problems, hopefully they're gone. Go ahead. What you got? Go ahead.
I've been listening, trying to listen all night, going in and out. And I think he's kind of addressed some of it. I myself just gonna have to go back and listen to the replay. I don't want to ask something that has already been asked. I'm not sure what have been.
That's all right.
And greetings, Calvin, Mr. Calvin. Greetings.
Greetings.
You speaking earlier about, I don't know. This is a question. This is just, I don't know if it's a question more than just a thought and just something I just need to work through. Because when he was speaking about Tiamat being the chaos, I have kind of always, in this whole big God question, right? The whole big God question, the whole big universe question. I have kind of mulled that over and almost felt like it had to be something feminine because, as they always say, something feminine energy is what creates, if I'm right. Okay. So when you was explaining about Tiamat, I'm like, well, that makes sense that it will be this type of female energy that does so. So when people are talking about this God concept, this universal concept, is that something that they could be referencing to or not realizing that referencing that, or am I understanding it incorrectly?
If I'm hearing you right, because it's a little hard to hear you for some reason, but are you essentially asking, is Tiamat an alternative to is the alternative to God? Is that what you're trying to say?
Well, the so-called universal God, not God of the Bible, but like this universal God concept, this creator, the creator.
Yeah. Okay. I see what you're saying now. So, well, in many ways, that's exactly what she is. But it's interesting is that she's not. She's the creator of all things. But really, what it is that she's not so much the creator as she is that creation emerges from her. So it's not necessarily even an act of will. It is an act of, because remember, the earth and the heavens were created when she was split open. Okay, so the thing is that she is her existence is sort of like a spontaneous act of creation. So she's not like sitting there like the God of Genesis thinking, okay, well, you know what? On the first day I'm going to do this, and on the second day I'm going to do that. These things emerge from her. She is sort of like the earth, you know. If you don't tame it, it's just going to grow whatever it's going to grow right out of it. And when Marduk, quote unquote, defeated her, really what he did was unleash her potentiality. And so things just sort of emerged from her. So it's not, I wouldn't say that she is the god or goddess of creation. She is creation. Okay, she is it. There is no primal cause to her. It is spontaneously arising. She is not created. She is self-created. So from her, all of existence emerges from her. So she's not a creator god. She is creation. And that's a very different way of looking at things, because in the West, we are used to having this entity that's from the outside that's saying, okay, I'm going to create you, but I'm not part of you. Whereas Tiamat is, you come from me, I am part of you, and you are part of me, and I am everything. And it's a very Eastern way of looking at things. But she is by far, I wouldn't say a creator god, but creation herself. Everything spontaneously comes from her existence. It's a very different view. It blows away the Western view of things, because the Western view likes origin stories. We like to say, okay, point A goes to point B and equals point C, right. But it's not like that. Even in physics, it's not like that. In quantum physics, it's not A to B. It's like A to S and S to C, and you know what I mean? It's like all of these energies are not necessarily, linear. And I think that that's why people have such a hard time with Tiamat, because they're trying to box her in what she represents. They're trying to box her into a Western conception. Right. And okay, everything starts with her. But actually, it's not that it starts with her, it starts from her. You know what I mean? Yeah. So, I don't know if that answers your question, but that's really the overarching concept of who she is.
Okay.
Yep.
Anything else,
Understood.
Dave?
No, I want to lose connection again. So you can finish going through the chat.
Val, one thing I want to mention to you before I just take a couple more questions for you. I know we got about 10 minutes. I actually should ask you this earlier. Obviously, in reference to some of these things we're talking about tonight, what's your thoughts on the Necronomicon and Lovecraft and?
Oh boy,
Yeah.
That's a loaded question. I'm about to get a bunch of hate mail right now.
That's all right. Be honest.
All right. Well, I'll give you a quick overview. When I was exposed to the Necronomicon, I was exposed to it in the 80s, and I went to a store called Magical Child in downtown Manhattan,
Mm-hmm.
and on the Lower East Side.
Right.
And I saw this $500 silver-plated book called the Necronomicon, right? And at the time, I'm what, 14, 15? I can't buy that, right?
Right.
But they go, oh no, here's like this mass market version of it, right? So I get the mass market version of the Necronomicon, written by quote unquote Simon, right?
Right.
And so, and of course it enthralls me, right? I mean, I was like, oh my God, what the hell is this? I mean, remember, I just started out myself.
Right.
So I was like, oh my God, what is this? Who's Ziku? Who the hell is that?
Right.
So, at first I was very enthralled by it. And then as time went on, I started to sort of do more research, and I found a very obscure article, and I can probably find it again, and anyone can find it at this point, where H.P. Lovecraft made it very clear that he was the writer of the Necronomicon. It wasn't Simon. It wasn't some mad Arab, as they called him. The person in the book was a mad Arab, and that it was a work of fiction. And so that explained why I didn't feel anything from it, but also too, it made me understand the concepts. And so as I got older and more versed in like Babylonian stuff and the languages and stuff, I realized, wait a minute, this has no connection to Babylon.
Right.
It has no connection. There is no Ziku. There is, you know what I mean? These are all like inventions. They none of those, well, one or two of those names, maybe a handful of those names do exist within the Babylonian, the Mesopotamian pantheon. But for the most part, there is no reference to any of these. They are not Sumerian in any way, shape, or form. Pazuzu is mentioned there in passing, actually in passing.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So it's like, that's the whole thing. So honestly, in my opinion, Necronomicon is a work of fiction. Well, I mean, it's also the writer's opinion.
Sure. No, I that's why I asked it. I mean, I find it just as an entertaining read. I never really. Yeah. I know some people are heavily into it. I mean, again, that's their choice. But I don't. Yeah. I'm not really moved from it from that perspective. I think it's an interesting read. I mean, I have all of Lovecraft's work, which leads me to my next question and your thoughts on this, the Call of Cthulhu. But the reason why I'm asking that is I don't know if are you a movie watcher or no? Or you don't really watch movies?
From time to time, I guess it depends. I mean, I have to say I don't watch a ton of movies.
Okay.
But why? What do you? All
right. Well, what I'm at, why I bring that up is, did you see Aquaman? The Aquaman.
No, I actually did not see that.
Well, and I want to get your thoughts on this, and I'll tell you why I brought up Call of Cthulhu and Lovecraft. Obviously, when they make these movies, there's always some messages they're throwing out there, obviously, because, I watch the movie behind the movie when I'm watching these type of movies. Well, Aquaman, it's like everything you're talking about tonight. I actually did a whole video on the Aquaman movie back in December, January, whenever the hell it was. When I saw the movie, everything we're talking about tonight is kind of what, sparked me. You see Aquaman, obviously in denial. They connected to Atlantis too, which I thought was interesting. But it's this whole journey of an individual who's, you know, he's supposed to be half mortal, half God, but obviously he doesn't accept the divine aspect of his nature. And then, he's got the trident. He's basically about commanding this Leviathan, this Tiamat energy. They show him at the end riding Leviathan, which I thought was interesting, which was symbolic of him now, as you said earlier, having harmony of that chaos. Because the whole movie really is about us. Everything that you're talking about tonight, the things we go through in life, the things we struggle, even though they were telling it in a mythological way. But there's a scene in the movie, which if you ever get a chance to check it out, which I thought, why did they blatantly just force this on the screen down our throat? Like he's talking to, now keep this in mind, we know Lovecraft was from the New England area. So Aquaman, the whole story takes place, that's where he was born and raised. So whoever wrote this movie was heavily influenced by Lovecraft and the Call of Cthulhu. So there's a scene where he's talking to his father on the pier. And if you ever get a chance to see it, as he's talking to his father, there's a book on the top of the pier. Now, don't ask me why there's just a book randomly there. And they zone in on the book, and it's Lovecraft's book. And they made sure they showed it. So what they're essentially saying, whoever wrote that movie, obviously, if you're familiar with the Call of Cthulhu, they're trying to say there's a connection there. I don't know if you've ever read it. Do you? So my question essentially is: do you think Lovecraft was influenced by this concept that we're talking about tonight when he wrote the Call of Cthulhu? Do you think there's any influence?
Absolutely. I think that Lovecraft, from what I know of him, he was completely and utterly influenced by these ideas. Cthulhu is chaos. I mean, it represents a chaotic figure. So absolutely. So there's some people that say that H.P. Lovecraft channeled all of this stuff, right? So meaning that maybe some of his stuff is true, right? I mean, he channels it. But really what I see is that he was someone who had a very deep interest in the occult and wrote about it, made stories around it. Now, was he influenced? Absolutely. I mean, there's no doubt about it. And if you read any of H.P. Lovecraft's stuff, and I mean outside of the Necronomicon,
right?
I mean, there's like he had some major, influence there, major understandings of the occult, which he then makes into a story. But there's like I said, there are a lot of people that say, well, he was a channel for this information. Okay, and then once someone mentions that, there's no way to dispute that. Okay, so I've had people say, well, yeah, you say Necronomicon is fiction, but I say he channeled that. Well, you win. You know what I mean? Because I can't prove that he did not channel it. Okay, but based on the evidence that I have from ancient Mesopotamian religion, there's very little connection. Right. And that, but even he said that it was a work of fiction, but could he be lying? Yes, no, I don't know.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, but was he influenced by it? Absolutely. Mm-hmm. I mean, he knew about Tiamat 100%.
Right. Yeah. If you ever get the time or get a chance, I sit down and watch that. I think you'll get a lot out of it because it just popped in my mind because everything we've been going through and all the stuff you described, they're showing in that movie, literally, step by step. And it's amazing. So if you ever get a chance, check it out. All right.
I will this weekend. I wrote it down. I'm going to do it.
Do it. And I'd like your thoughts. If you get a chance, email me. Just like your thoughts on it. I mean, obviously you might pick up on a whole bunch of different things. You might perceive some things differently, but I think it's everything you were describing tonight. And I would suggest other listeners. All right, people, we might have time for one more question and see if anybody else has any other questions. We got a couple of minutes. I don't see. I think we got to all of it. Let me just scroll up, make sure I didn't miss nothing. Questions. I'm not going to just read comments. I'm going to skip that. And more questions. Hold on. Where is it? Blah, blah, blah. I think we got mostly everything. So some people tell me they're having connect. Every time you come on, Baal, you must haywire the internet connection.
No, the thing is that there's always things out there that they don't, people don't
out there. I know
they don't want anyone to know about, or they want to, continue to foster certain ideals. You know what I mean? So sometimes it happens. Sometimes it's,
you're right. I remember one time it was mine. It's definitely not on my end. I know Raven stuff is going haywire. There was Nikita earlier left. She said it was buffering. There's nothing on my end. So yeah, I know when you put this stuff out into the ethers, it causes a reaction. But go ahead. What were you going to say, Baal?
Yeah, what I'm going to say is that sometimes when information is presented that is sort of counter or at least challenges the norm, there are I guess I could say forces or energies out there that don't want that to happen, that they don't want they don't want anything to challenge the status quo.
Right.
And and it could be people too. It may not be a spiritual entity. It could be just like a lot of people sort of thinking at the same time. It's like, oh my God, I don't want that myth to be busted.
Right.
I don't want that to, you know what I mean? It's like there's a lot of intention that could also be doing that. But also there are people who have viewed me as an enemy, who've tried, and they're actually failing. They're actually falling apart as we speak. That try to take me down, but I'm not the only one. I'm just one of many people they want to take down.
Right.
But the thing is that it just backfires on them in the end. And that's the thing. Now they're rubble. They're rubble. You know what I mean? But they'll continue to try if it works for them. So it happens. It happens. But the thing is that this thing is recorded. People can always look back.
That's it.
And listen to it.
And John in Massachusetts says every time you come on that the weather gets crazy weird over there.
Yeah. Well, that's the whole thing because but that is actually the same thing where I am right now. There's going to be like a hailstorm here. And the thing is that's because it's disruptive. It's disruptive. It's like causing things to shift around because it's not the status quo. It's not what people want to hear necessarily.
Correct.
And that causes disruption.
Correct.
Some people see that as a good thing. Some people see it as a bad thing. If you're very superstitious, you might say, "Oh no, Baal is clearly attracting some type of negativity." But if you look at it on the other side, saying, "No, maybe he's attracting sort of disruption in the system."
That's right.
So it really depends on your outlook.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, I noticed that also. People will say, "Oh my God!" Every time something happens, you mention something. There's like thunder out there.
Yeah.
But I see that as a good thing because I'm like, all right, well, yeah, because I'm, pushing the limits of certain things, things that people hold dear.
Right.
And that's very disruptive.
True indeed. All right. So what we're going to do, we're going to wrap it up. But before you give your closing thoughts, Baal, again, I want to put out there all of Baal's books. And again, in my opinion, he's reasonably priced on all his books for the information he offers. He's got a new book out that we covered a couple shows back twice. Definitely check that out. Romancing the Citra, Ghosts, Goblins, Demons. In the Hebrew tradition, a very read you need to sit down. And actually, that's recently inspired me to go back into my Klepothic work with Lucifer, by the way. So you're to thank for that. I kind of went back and looked at things different. But a great book. I definitely would recommend you guys check that out in addition to all his other books. The book A lot of the information we've been talking about tonight, again, Baal's book, Tiamat Unveiled, and just about all of his books you can either get on a digital format if you have a Kindle and hard copy, and they're all available on Amazon. You could also go to his website, baalkadmon.com. He's also got a YouTube channel where he puts up podcasts. You can get on his emailing list. I'm on his emailing list. Anytime he posts something new or he's got something coming out, he'll send it to you. So you can get on his email list if you go to his website. All right. So support him. I think he's one of the, the guys out there that takes a very neutral approach. I try to bring guests like that on. I don't try to bring people on that are force their approach down your throat. That's not what we do here. It's about just having an open dialogue, whether you agree or not. So having said that, Baal, I'll give you your closing thoughts and give you the last word.
All right, thank you, and again, thank you for having me on the show. And I guess the closing thought is based on just like the last few minutes of what we were saying, is don't accept anything at face value.
Right.
Okay. Always question.
Right.
And that's why I write what I write. Yes, it might be academic a little bit. It might be, for some people, it might be a little dry. That's okay. The reason why it's like that is because I'm trying to, show certain ideas. And the thing is that a lot of the ideas that are out there are not based on fact, but are based on sort of like mythology. And my purpose in this world is to try to get people to see things more critically. And again, don't take anything at face value. Always research, 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 especially now when we have all of these resources at our disposal. Research everything, because the truth is out there, but don't take it for granted. Don't just accept what people say.
I agree.
Research.
I agree. Well, I appreciate you coming on, and look, I appreciate all the work you do. I appreciate all the books that you put out. And I know, everybody's got their gift, and I always tell people that I think your gift is in this area. Academically, I think you go in, that's one of your gifts. You go a little bit more deeper on an academic level and a factual level than in my opinion, some authors do. So I do appreciate that. I will check with you. Hopefully sometime next month we get you back on. If your schedule permits it, I'll check with you. I'd like to get you back next month. And if you get a chance, check that movie out. I'd like to get your thoughts on it. Shoot me an email or through Facebook or whatever. Let me know. I'd like to get your thoughts.
I'll definitely watch it this weekend.
All right. Appreciate it. All right. Thanks a lot, Brother Baal. We thank you, everybody, for tuning in. And we will see everybody on Tuesday night.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.